Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. It's the Friday show. Time to get the party started. Maybe I'll even loosen my tie. No. Better not. And we begin in the United States Senate, where Robert Kennedy Jr. proved why he's such an asset to the ruling class. Over the course of 3 hours of testimony, the U.S. Health Secretary lied, exaggerated, obfuscated, all in the service of hiding the true problem with healthcare in America, the profit motive, and the insurance cartel. And you could tell the entire spectacle was going to be a fraud when from the very get-go, the Republican chairman of the committee, Mike Crapo, denied a request from Senator Ron Wyden to put Kennedy under oath, given his history of spinning lies.
So, my request, Mr. Chairman, and I think it is unfortunate that I have to do this, but given the unprecedented nature of the witness's behavior, I would ask now that the committee formally swear in Robert Kennedy as a witness.
Senator Wyden, I will personally object and will reject your request.
Well, then a few minutes later, with the chairman's help, Kennedy told a whopper, claiming Republicans passed a provision in their budget bill that dramatically increased funding for rural hospitals. Kennedy called it historic.
President Trump has now allocated through the One Big Beautiful Bill $50 billion, so $10 billion a year over the next 5 years. What we give to rural hospitals, that 6% represents $19 billion a year. So we're increasing that by $10 billion. So we're infusing more than 50% increase in the amount of money that is going to rural communities over the next 5 years. There's never been anything like that in history. It is the biggest investment, and it should stem this hemorrhage.
Yep, not at all true. The budget bill is going to demolish rural hospitals by slashing Medicaid funding that those hospitals need to survive. Republicans know this, so they added the rural funding in as a temporary Band-Aid. But an analysis from the Kaiser Family Foundation shows that the rural funding Kennedy touted only makes up for about a third of the funding that is going to be cut to those hospitals. Quote, the $50 billion in new funding could offset a little over a third of the estimated cuts to federal Medicaid spending in rural areas, $137 billion over 10 years, or about 5% of the total estimated cuts to federal Medicaid spending, $911 billion over 10 years. This does not account for other revenue losses related to the bill, including cuts to federal spending for the ACA marketplaces, or the revenue losses stemming from the increased number of people who will be uninsured because of the expiration of the enhanced ACA premium tax credits. That report also noted that the $50 billion rural hospital fund expires in 5 years, while most of the Medicaid cuts are backloaded to take effect after that, beyond 2030. And then last indefinitely. So this is, at best, as I said, a Band-Aid, but one that doesn't cover the entire wound and is going to be ripped off just as it starts to bleed heavily. But Kennedy's lie about this program was allowed to just hang out there nearly the entire hearing until it was disproven by Senator Bernie Sanders.
It's going to be the biggest infusion of federal dollars into rural health care in American history.
Yeah, you know why? Because you're cutting $150 billion for rural hospitals. You're putting $50 billion back. That's not an infusion. That's a loss of $100 billion. All right, next question.
Notice Kennedy had no response there. Sanders also wanted to know who is advising Kennedy at HHS on vaccines, because the moves he's making so far to limit them have gone against the recommendations from every major medical group in the U.S. Take a look.
Because we've got the entire medical community on one side. You got the AMA representing hundreds of thousands of doctors, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Public Health Association. All of these organizations are telling us that COVID vaccine and vaccines in general are safe and effective. You are casting doubt on that. Who are who are the organizations that are agreeing with you and casting aspersions on vaccines?
The primary advisors are Marty McCary, Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Oz, Vinay Prasad.
So you got a few doctors.
Yeah, my buddies Marty, Jay, and that quack TV doctor. We've got it all handled. What's so nefarious here is Kennedy correctly identifies that the U.S. is one of the sickest countries in the world. It has a healthcare system that's completely broken. It's why his MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, full of online influencers and cranks, has gained so much purchase among the American people. When you can't receive actual medical care, either because you don't have insurance or you do have insurance and still can't afford it, you're more vulnerable to being led by cranks into alternative medicines that you can just order online with a discount code from some right-wing podcaster. To Kennedy, the reason why the country is sick is not because of extremely profitable insurance companies gatekeeping and blocking people from seeing a doctor or receiving the treatment they need. No, it's because of everything other than that. It's the seed oils, or the red dye in foods, or the vaccines. Yeah, it's the vaccines making us all sick. What's interesting is the environmental factors that Kennedy wants to focus on instead of the insurance cartel stop when it comes to corporate pollution. Kennedy's long history of advocacy for the environment suddenly ended when he joined the Trump administration that's rolling back regulations in order to allow companies to spew more toxins into the air and water. That issue was raised during the hearing by Senator Tina Smith.
Take a look at what you are doing. And, I've heard a lot about MAHA today while we've been here. There's a lot of Americans, Secretary Kennedy, who trust you, who believe what you say, especially when you say you're standing up to corruption. And I think that they need to know you apparently have a lot of influence with President Trump. Did you ask him not to roll back these regulations that are stopping the big corporations from dumping heavy metals and endocrine disruptors into our soil and water? I mean, there's no evidence that you have been even opposing that.
Again, no response from Kennedy there. The Kennedy from 20 years ago, though, would have been crusading against corporate pollution. Today, he's crusading against the agencies that study the effects of that pollution. He's mass firing researchers and scientists at various health agencies, including the CDC, because they are the ones actually making us sick, according to Kennedy.
We are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at the CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you.
And I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yep, it's the civil servants at CDC screwing us, and not the insurance companies that collectively siphoned $9 billion out of the healthcare system last year to enrich executives and shareholders. $9 billion that should go toward care and ensuring people can see a doctor when they need to, instead diverted to more yachts and Maseratis for the ruling class. And $9 billion in profit is a bad year for them. They normally make a lot more. Anyway, if you want to know where this is all headed, check out Florida. The state's Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, is implementing Kennedy's MAHA agenda, but on steroids. He announced this week the state would be getting rid of all vaccine mandates. All of them.
The Florida Department of Health, in partnership with the governor, is going to be working to end all vaccine mandates in Florida law. All of them. All of them. All of them. Every last one of them. Every last one of them. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery.
Whoa. Slavery? How is this like You know what? Never mind. Just a slight dip in vaccination rates can bring back a whole bunch of diseases that had been virtually eliminated. You're seeing that unfold in Texas with one of the largest measles outbreaks in decades among unvaccinated communities. I try to be optimistic, but I'll admit I can be pretty pessimistic at times. But even at my most pessimistic, say 10 years ago, I would not have predicted that conservatives would try to bring back whooping cough and polio just to own the libs. All right, staying in Washington, D.C., because it's where District Attorney Jeanine Pirro has once again been rebuked by the city's grand jury members. Jurors failed to return an indictment sought by prosecutors against a woman in Indiana who allegedly threatened President Trump on Facebook. Last month, the Department of Justice announced the arrest of Natalie Rose Jones as she was attending a peaceful protest in D.C. She was charged with threatening to take the life of the president. But the evidence cited was just various Instagram and Facebook posts of Jones calling Trump a terrorist and dictator. Now, some posts were spicier than others, and there was one directed at the FBI in which she volunteered to disembowel Trump with Liz Cheney present. Those close to her say they told authorities she has mental health issues. This is yet another person that Pirro's DC attorney's office has failed to secure an indictment against through the grand jury. That also includes a woman accused of assaulting a federal officer who Pirro's office tried and failed 3 times to indict. And it includes the famed sandwich thrower who, in the early days of Trump's DC takeover, called a group of federal officers fascists and then threw a Subway sub at them. He was charged with felony assault against a federal officer, but the DC grand jury determined, nah, he's cool. And then later, news broke that the DC grand jury opted not to indict another person, a man who allegedly threatened to kill fascists, including the president. A former prosecutor, Brendan Ballou, told CBS News how rare it is to be rejected by a grand jury, let alone it happening several times. Quote, not only have I never heard of this happening, I've never heard of a prosecutor who's heard of this happening. Incredible. And I mean this with no hint of irony whatsoever, but to the folks serving on the DC grand jury, welcome to the resistance. All right, finally, more stupid bullshit from the White House. This week, it announced that U.S. Space Force Command is being moved out of the state of Colorado and to Alabama instead, as a favor to the state's conservative government and defense industry base. Trump also said a big reason for the move was to punish Colorado because it uses mail-in voting.
The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. They went to all mail-in voting, so they have automatically crooked elections. And we can't have that. Yeah,
get ready for a lot more of this as Trump seeks to punish states that encourage more people to vote. President is advancing the government's militarized space operations while destroying its workforce for peaceful spacefaring. Just ahead of the Labor Day holiday, Trump signed an executive order to cancel the bargaining rights of NASA workers. Trump added the space agency to the list of bureaucratic offices that he's deemed to have national security missions, which the White House claimed allows them to terminate union agreements. The White House has also said it is going after unions that oppose his agenda. Upwards of 1 million federal workers have already had their union contracts ripped up on the president's demand. In addition to NASA's civil servants being added to the list, so too were workers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration within the National Weather Service. This is the largest labor rollback in NASA's history. It affects thousands of scientists and engineers. Roughly half of the space agency's workforce was unionized before the order. Now to the segment that strikes fear into the oligarchy every Friday. This week's rich dicks are the Trump sons. Yep, while Dad is in the White House, Eric and Donald Jr. are attending to the family's business, which is now focused mostly on running various crypto pump and dump schemes. And this week, the sons launched a new one that has expanded theirs and the president's wealth by billions of dollars. It's called WLFI, and it's linked to the crypto company the Trumps founded called World Liberty Financial. WLFI debuted on trading platforms this week. The tokens were previously sold privately to connected investors for the price of about 1.5 cents each, setting everyone up to get rich when the tokens go public at a much higher price. On Monday, they launched at about 25 cents a pop, with billions of dollars of transactions buying and selling them. The Trump family owns just under a quarter of all WLFI tokens. According to the Wall Street Journal, at that opening price, the value of the Trumps' holding in WLFI is worth around $5 billion. $5 billion fucking dollars. Last week, just before the coin launched publicly, Eric Trump gave this weepy interview to the Financial Times about how much financial harm the family has suffered since his dad became president. Like they've made all these business sacrifices. He claimed, quote, "If there's one family that hasn't profited off politics, it's the Trump family. In fact, I would sit there and say that we would have had many more zeros behind our name had my father not run in the first place. The opportunity cost, the legal cost, the toll it's taken on our family has been astronomical." Oh, has it? Really? Astronomical? You just made $5 billion using your dad's name and power to sell meaningless crypto coins. What the hell are you whining about? And how is that not profiting off politics? The Trumps' dive into crypto has been more profitable for them than any building or branding enterprise the family has ever been involved in. Again, this is from the Wall Street Journal. Quote, "The trading debut was most likely the biggest financial success for the president's family since the inauguration. WLFI is likely now the Trumps' most valuable asset, exceeding their decades-old property portfolio. While the president's family has continued to pursue property deals around the world since taking office, the fast-moving crypto business has had the biggest early impact." Doesn't sound to me like a family that suffered financially due to politics. And this is all in addition to the other crypto schemes the president and his family are involved in, like the Trump meme coin that debuted just ahead of the inauguration. The Trumps own 80% of that coin, a stake also worth billions of dollars. There's also the Melania coin, and Trump-connected companies that are raking in hundreds of millions of dollars in crypto transaction fees. According to a report from the watchdog group Accountable.us, the vast majority of the president's wealth is now due to his crypto ventures. He's been able to grow that wealth thanks to the actions he's taken as president to benefit the crypto industry. According to Brett Naylor with Public Citizen, this is the greatest corruption scandal in presidential history. Quote, "We have only seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the damage that this corruption will inflict on the American people, the impact of attempts by the Trump family and others to buy and sell politics and politicians will continue to ricochet." Donald Trump Jr. was on Newsmax this week trying to defend his family's corrupt dealings. He claimed that you shouldn't be mad because this is good for all the American people.
This isn't something he did when he got into office. He campaigned on doing just this because he saw that. So yeah, Eric and I, we don't have policy on these things, but this is common sense. This is good for America. This is good for democracy.
Good for democracy, huh? How? Already, the president is using his meme coins to sell influence in the White House. He invited the top purchasers of the Trump coin to a private dinner earlier this year. The message is clear. You can buy access through my crypto coins. That's not compatible with democracy. It's also just a bad financial deal for pretty much everyone except the Trump family and insiders. Those who bought into the hype of the Trump meme coin and bought it at its height of $45 have been almost entirely wiped out. Coin is worth only $8 now. And already you're seeing the same rug pull when it comes to this new WLFI coin. If you listen to the Trump sons and bought the token when it opened on Monday at 25 cents, you're getting hammered right now. It's already dropped to 18 cents as of this recording. So you're screwed. But for the Trumps who are able to get their coins for a penny, it's still a great deal for them. Anyway, this is what the Sons have planned for the next few years, growing their wealth through endless pump and dump schemes that take advantage of their supporters and lax crypto regulation promoted by their dad in the Oval Office. It's why they're rich dicks this week, but fail sons forever. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Tennessee. It was sent in by Donna along the Little Tennessee River in Vonore. Enjoy. Thank you, Donna. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day, capitalism will fall. I promise it will. But until then, we'll be right here. See you next week.